All right, everybody doing tonight? Let's go ahead and go to our module for this week is week 8. We're covering core data tonight. I want to talk a little bit about core data before we get into it, what core data is. All right. Last week we went over master detail again in the app that we created, or you created for this week, or for last week, do tonight. GitHub, screen rotation with the band app, and then customizing it to your own liking. Also, prototype, I believe, due tonight as well, the screen UI. And so I've already got some submittals on that, so some of you are having a lot of fun with that. Pretty easy to create once you start doing it. You're prototyping. Prototyping is used in every mobile app development project I've ever been in, whether it be paper, whiteboard, or like you're using for this semester, an online tool. And there's tons of online tools to use. The one I chose, the one that's probably the easiest to use out of all of them. And that's why I chose it, for you guys to start with that one. And it's pretty robust, pretty easy to create once you start working on it. So tonight we're going to talk about core data, what it's about in application development. And so basically you have in core data, you've heard of SQL databases, probably. Core data, at the root of it is a data file, which is actually a SQLite file. Then your persistent store coordinator, and manage object model. This right here, by the way, up here, is all managed within Xcode in what's called core data. And core data, right below the iPad application, is what's called the manage objects, which would be things like your field names. So field names, first name, last name, email, phone. So if you're familiar with tables in Excel or cells, columns, really, that's what you'll see tonight when we do the core data. And so, like in an Excel document, you're going to have this cell going to be empty. Then usually the headers of an Excel document, if you were to convert a SQL table to an Excel document, the headers would be the names of the files, or the names of the fields. So maybe first name, last name, email, something like that. Over here, be record number. Then over here would be content record 1. So on and so forth. This field, generally in database terminologies, is an auto increment field. So it's going to increment every time you add a new record. This column here, you do not have to worry about auto incrementing in core data. It does it for you. Okay. We do have to create in core data field names and the field types. That's it. Name and type. It does everything for you behind the scenes to the SQL level. And really, with the new update of Xcode, there's no real way to manipulate that SQL data or SQL format and layout. Used to, when core data first came out, you could actually go to SQLite in Google Firefox or in Firefox browser, and there's a plugin you can get to the root of the SQLite database and do some manipulation But now with probably the last year and a half updates, you no longer can you do that. So you guys will enjoy it when we get into it, but let's go on, core data. So let me make this a little bit bigger here. See a little bit better from back here. So manage objects are created in your application to store data. Manage object may be thought of as a row or record, like I drew up on the board, and a relational table. Relational table generally refers to some type of key field. Some type of key field. In this case, key field on this table is the auto increment field. It's unique, irregardless of what's over here. This is always going to be unique. And that's where core data, I'll put a padlock up here. Core data kind of locks this in. You can't touch it. Okay? Like the MC Hammer song. If anybody remembers MC Hammer? Okay. Manage object also, for each new record to be added, a new manage object must be created to store the data. Similarly, when retrieving data, you'll need a manage object as well. And you'll see this in the lab tonight. We'll show you how to create a manage object to read files from core data and to write files from core data. And those are the two objects we'll be playing with, reading and writing. Writing would be like writing a new file, creating a new file, updating a file that exists, or deleting a file. Reading a file would be just reading the database and loading them into, say, a data grid or something. So manage objects are actually instances of what's called NS manage object class, or and the subclass thereof. These objects are contained and maintained by the manage object context. Core data applications never interact directly with persistent store, translation of persistent store, SQL database that we talked about earlier. Also, instead, the application interacts with the managed objects instead with a layer called core data stack. And then that context maintains the status of the objects in relation to the underlying data store, i.e. SQL database, and manages the relationship between the managed objects defined in the managed object model. All interactions with the underlying database are held temporarily within the context until that context is instructed to be saved and changes be updated, at which point the changes are passed down through the core data, written to the persistent store, i.e. the SQL database. So relationships in context with core data are the same they are in any other relationship database, and they refer to one another. And you can create, you'll see here in a sec, we only create one store basically in our contact database tonight, but you can create multiple instances of NS manage objects. Each instance would be referred to as in a table in a database, really. There's a thing called fetch objects in manage object model, provides alternative to defining relationships. Fetch properties allow properties from one data object to be accessed from another. Like an example, you could save, say you're saving a picture in an application. You could save it as a string, just the name of the picture. And then when it pulls it up, it uses the picture object or the object bit to pull it up between the entities. Fetch request is basically where you'll see in the first screen we do tonight, where you can request to search a database for a certain name in a contact database. And it's going to do a request, and it's kind of like a SQL query. You're querying the database for where it finds all instances of last names that begin with the letter K or something. Then it retrieves them, and you can put them in any format. We're going to use it for our instance. The master page will have a load of all of the database objects you add. The detail page will be the detail of the actual contact itself. So where you'll be able to add in, I think, full name, phone number, email, something like that, 3 fields. and then you'll be able to search those. You'll also be able to delete those contact databases from that master by swiping left or swiping right and be able to delete it. So a persistent store coordinator is responsible for coordinating access to multiple persistent store objects. The object itself in the store is the underlying storage environment in which core data works on, and has 3 disk-based and 1 memory-based persistent store. And by default, as I mentioned earlier, iOS uses SQLite as a persistent store. So entity descriptions are defined in Xcode, or maybe defined, and we do define them. I'll show you that's how I do it. When a new project's created, you've seen it already. At the bottom of even a single view, there's that checkbox for core data. We'll check it tonight when we create the new instance. And a file is going to be created in your root on your file manager on the left side with that extension, that XC data model ID extension. I recommend if you think if you think an app is going to use core data, check it upon creation of the project. You can add it later, but it's more difficult to do so. If you add it on the beginning, it puts all the hooks in the application delegate and all throughout the app. So it's much better to just put it on the front end. And even if you don't use it, it's not going to hurt to have it in your application, by the way. Okay? So it's not going to hurt to have it in there if you don't use it. So what we're going to do in a second here is we're going to go to GitHub, have you log into GitHub, go to the in-class project for week 8, fork and clone like we've done a couple times already in here. Once you fork and clone it, I want you to download it to your Mac and run it in Xcode. Okay, so go ahead and do that. I'll do it with you on my screen. And again, we're going to week 8 in class. And that's the link we want to fork. Make sure you log into GitHub and do your fork like we've done before. And it is, you'll see in a second, it's pretty easy to create a master detail core data app. I've created tons of them, and it's a lot of fun to do.
What kind of app uses core data?
Do it now?
What kind of app uses core data?
Pretty much every app you can think of, like Notes is an example. That's in both iOS and Android, both, like a Notes app. Gaming development apps use core data, use database. Anything that's going to store information for that application, which is a majority of apps today, are going to use core data. And so local core data examples, again, would be Notes, your music playlist on your actual phone and iPads that you create will be in core data. You can move them from device to device, but it loads it locally just to run faster. I'm trying to think what else. Well, most all your games, any utility app, even an example everybody will be familiar with in here will be like even like Word and Excel and PowerPoint on mobile devices, like on iPads and stuff. Use core data to determine where you've been in that computer, to what files you've created. It's a little bit of core data. So yeah, pretty much even the smallest apps you wouldn't think of, like say, I'm trying to think, even all your social media apps use a little bit of core data on the local end to speed things up. So a lot of different uses for it. But mainly any app that you're going to, the user is going to be creating data or needing to pull data history. An example is one I use all the time every day. I was diagnosed with sleep apnea years ago and didn't start doing anything until this year with it, like a lot of guys and gals. But anyway, it has an app in that with an apnea machine that sucks that data into a local app, and I can see it in the core data environment. So that answer your question? Cool. Okay, so make sure you fork this and then download it to your local Mac in the clone or download button as always. and then just go ahead and extract it and run it. As soon as it opens up, make sure to click the open button because we download it from the internet. The one thing you'll have to uncheck, if it is checked, which it more than likely will be, is if team is checked with a team in there, uncheck that. We don't need a team. Everything else should stay as is. And remember, when you click on the main root of the project, like I just did on the left where it says My Contacts, here where it says Team Unknown, I want to go to that and select None. On Team Unknown, just select None, and then let it continue indexing. While it's doing that, I'm going to go to where this was downloaded to. Inside of there should be a, inside of that zip file, should be a Word document, I believe. Yeah, a readme.docx. We can open that up on your local Mac. That way, I'm going to view it on the screen. I'll leave it up there while we're doing stuff for the next section here. But I'm going to go over the README doc while Xcode's loading. So if you want to double click on that and let that load on your Mac, that'd be awesome. So again, everybody should have logged into GitHub, went to week 8 in class, clicked on the week 8 core data fork and clone it, download it. Whatever the simulator is on your machine's fine. Probably be 8, I'm guessing. 8+ on mine, it looks like. As soon as it stops loading, like mine's completed now, I'm going to go ahead and play it. And remember, you can do Command-R on the keyboard command, or you can hit the play button, either one. Either one will work. Command-R will compile it and run it. You get that simulator started. All right, so here's the Word document. I don't know if yours is up yet, but I'll bring mine up here so you can see it. I'll make it a little larger. Okay. So what we're going to do in a second after we play with the one that we've just downloaded, we're going to create a brand new one. There's really not a lot of code to it. You'll see in a second. When we create the new one, by the way, we'll keep the one we downloaded on your Mac just to kind of look back and forth at it, look at some code and stuff, so we don't have to type it in. So we're going to create a single view application in a second. We'll make sure and check the core data. We'll save it to our desktop. We'll make sure it's portrait only by unchecking all but portrait. Then we will immediately go to the core data model and add in an entity called contact. We're going to add in 3 attributes, all string type, one called email, one called full name, one called phone. We'll place our objects on the detail viewer, the view control, which is detail viewer. The objects are going to be like that there on the screen with all the arrows on it. We're going to add a back button, a label, or a title bar with a back button called contacts, 3 text fields, a save button, an edit button. The call button we're not going to add. We don't need it. We're going to leave that one out, I think. I have it on my screenshot, but we're not going to put it on there. The thought behind the call button was if you're on the actual phone, you could actually click the call button and call that number, basically. So even though call is on here, I guess I do have call on here. If I have it on here, we'll put it on there. I don't know if we're going to do any code for that or not. We might just put it on there anyway. So we're going to be a number of outlets. You'll notice full name, email, phone, BTN save, BTN edit, BTN call, status. Actions, 4 of them, save, edit, call, back. Delegates, we'll hit the control drag to the view controller, just like we did a couple weeks back for the hiding keyboard. Full name, email, phone. We'll use a placeholder property on the text fields for full name, email, and phone. And then we'll add a UI table view. to our single view, because this is where we start showing you how a single view, by creating a single view, you can add a master detail. So thus far, we've done 2 master details. Both of them we selected master detail upon creation. This time I'm showing you how to add a master detail to a single view, which is really easy to do. So we'll add a UI table to our layout. We'll embed a navigator controller in there. We'll add from the navigation controller, we will title it My Contacts. Make sure it's the initial controller, because by default, the single view is going to be the initial view controller is going to be the default. We'll add a bar button item, control drag it for the first time from one page to the other, to where when you click on the bar button plus item, it will go to that page. We will make the table a right detail. That way, kind of like on the Notes app, how when you see on each row at the right has like a little greater than symbol. We'll tap on that to go to the record. We will make the segue identifier update contacts. We'll name that. We'll select the navigated items, title it My Contacts. We'll save our work. Then on number 9, we'll have to bind it to the table, the UI table view class. By creating a new class for the first time, you're going to create a brand new class for this to work. Once we create that class on number 9 and bind it to the storyboard, we will then on number 10 and 11 look at some code and do some copying and pasting, because a lot of the stuff we're doing tonight is object creation. So I don't want you to have to type in any code for this. We'll auto size the storyboard like we've done umpteen times in here already. We'll test it, and it should end up looking like the one that we're going to see here in a second, where basically at the top right of the screen, on this screen here, which is the first one I'm pointing to, there's a plus symbol there. If you scroll up a little bit on the Word document, we'll hit the plus symbol. It'll go to the detail view where we can add in a new contact. We'll hit save. It'll go back to the master detail. Then we can search this. We can delete stuff. We can click on each one of these and go back to the detail and edit. And then, so for testing, you're going to click on the plus symbol, add a contact or two, update a contact, and delete a contact for testing tonight. Almost there. Challenge for this week. Now, we're going to do it in class, but for your take home, while mine's loading, I'll go over that. So when you leave tonight, you will have created a core data from scratch as far as the nuts and bolts of it. The code you're going to bring over manually. You'll copy and paste it. We're not going to type that in. It'll take too long. But you'll be able to create, the main thing for you to be able to do tonight is successfully create a core data objects, right? That's the big one, to learn that. You've done enough of code now to where you know logic stuff a little bit. So now you'll be able to see how core data works. But the assignment take home for tonight after we're through with the in class is, well, I mentioned at the top, core data is what Apple now recommends and even requires. If your app does require a database, they can determine from running your app if it's using core data, by the way. And by the way, there is a job in Apple, multiple jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs of just testers, by the way. So something to keep in mind. So for your core data assignment, you're going to create an application. The one we're doing in class is a contact database, but you can create whatever you want to. It can be a recipe, a website database, a contact database, whatever. A sports score database, doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do. You could do one for your, I don't know, if you have a fantasy league, it could be a fantasy league database, it doesn't matter. You can create whatever you want to. And I would recommend creating something maybe that might be purposeful. The other option for take home, and this started last week before last, was you could add core data to your final app. Some of you might have already started working on that, hopefully, at least the foundation of your final app, the shell of it or something. If nothing else, create the project, check core data, and maybe add in some, put some homework in on what type of fields you might need. And here's what I always do, by the way, when I'm planning a database for core data, I always add in a whole bunch of miscellaneous fields that I know I'm not going to use when I first roll the app out. One of the reasons I do that is I don't have to go back into core data and change something if it's a miscellaneous whatever. Miscellaneous 1, 2. I usually create like a miss 1 through a miss 10, miss 20. That way there are fields for things that sometimes you always forget or you don't think of maybe when you're first creating the app. Because you want to put some due diligence in what core data you know you're going to need for the app to run. But then there's always going to be fields that come up later that you don't think about initially, right? And that's where like a whole bunch of fields call something like, let's see, 1, 2, so on and so forth. You get what I'm saying? Just a whole bunch of them. And you can't rename them easily, but that's okay. The way I generally do it is I have what's called a data dictionary. I'll put in the root of my project. And that data dictionary will basically just be a notepad document or something like that. And what we'll have in the data dictionary is a field name, equals, and then I will describe what that field is for in the data dictionary. Simple as that. Nothing real complex. Let's say if I have 50 fields in my database, I can look at the data dictionary in the text file in the root of my project and know exactly what that field's used for. Make sense? And if somebody else works on it down the road, like if I upload it to GitHub, somebody else works on it or forks it, they have that work to start with, if that makes sense. Cool. All right, so let's see what we're looking at. All right. Yeah, fail. Let's run it again. If it fails, by the way, you can generally run it anyway on the simulator. I'll show you what I mean by that if yours ever fails like that. And usually if you stop it, restart it, it's fine. All right, so it's running. Got my splash screen. And I'll go over tonight too, just a resource anyway for your create icon, which is a challenge this week, where that's found, how you can do that. All right, so totally blank slate. I'm gonna go ahead and click my plus symbol up here. And I'm gonna go ahead and add in full name, email, and phone number, and click save. I'm going to add one more. All right, so I've got two contact databases. I'm going to go up here and see if the search works. Let's just type in the word T for Ted. There we go. Let's type in C for Chuck. Let's type in S for Smith. Let's type in K for Conkle. And you'll notice how it populates that. I click on one of them. It brings up that record. And now notice instead of the save button, it's gone. Edit's now in there. Save button is invisible. I'm going to change just some stuff here. Maybe I decide to change an email or something. I might up here and say, change the email to that. Update. Now just to make sure it held it. There it is. To go back and swipe any of these, I can swipe left on any one of these rows, and you notice the delete pops up. And I can delete one or all of my contacts. Okay? And now if I was to close this app and restart it, those contacts will still be in there because they're saved in the core data. So were you guys able to run yours on your end? Cool. Awesome. So I'm going to stop mine just to see if it's saved. It should, but I always validate, make sure. All right, so we're going to keep this one. We're going to, once you've verified that you can add a contact, edit, delete, whatever, then we're going to stop this Xcode environment. And I'm going to kind of help you with these 14 steps. When we get down to step number, let's see, 10 and 11, we're actually going to use the code. It'll just be quicker, I think, to use the code in the existing Xcode. But if you already have up in front of you the GitHub, you can go there as well. We've done that before. You can go to the website and go to my contacts, and we're going to go, the two files we're going to be playing with is viewcontroller.swift and contact table viewcontroller.swift, those two. Those are the two files that have all the code in it. There's a little bit of code. Looks like, let's see, a couple hundred lines maybe on the view controller. And the contact table view. A couple hundred lines probably on that, a little over that. But again, we're not going to be, we're going to bind our data or our objects, but we're not going to be typing any code, and it might be copy and paste just to make it quicker. So, are we ready? So go ahead and close or stop your Xcode if it's running. Leave it up. Don't close it. Just stop your Xcode. First thing we're going to do is we're going to create a single view application, and we're going to make sure when you select the single view application to check core data, and we're going to call it My Contacts. So I'll leave that up there for just a second on steps 1 and 2. Create a brand new project in Xcode, single view, core data, make sure it's checked, and call it My Contacts. If the unit check thing pops up or the unit test, uncheck those. We don't want unit test. So I'll do it with you. So file, new, project. And I'll just bring the Word document up on my screen. That way it might be easier. My contact. Uncheck the unit test. We don't want that. Definitely check core data, though. Yours should end up looking like that. Project name is My Contact, all one word. Then go down and check mark core data and uncheck the 2 unit tests. The unit test and the UI test. Uncheck those. Click Next. And we're going to click on the left side on desktop. We're going to save it there. So you can double click desktop if you want to underneath favorites. And make sure create Git is unchecked if it's not unchecked for you already. And click Create. And all we should have is a single view when this comes up. That's it. But while that's loading, let's go to the Word document. I'll show you what we're going to do while it finishes loading. Once it gets finished loading in Xcode, you're going to uncheck all but the portrait orientation under device orientation. And then we're going to go right into the core data model to add an entity called contact with those 3 attributes on number 4, which are going to be email, full name, and phone. So mine's created, and I'm going to uncheck everything but portrait underneath device orientation. So where I'm hovering on the overhead, uncheck the landscape left, landscape right, leave portrait in there. You'll also notice on the on your application on the left side, there's that new file we talked about called mycontact.xc data model ID. We'll click on that once with our mouse on the left side. Now what's going to show up here is where we're going to be camping out for just a second. We're going to create an entity first, and then we're going to create some properties for those entities. An entity you could think of as a table. Okay, that's an entity. And then on the middle there, under entities would be the entity name, and all the properties, which are going to be the full name, email, and phone, I believe. So everybody see this little button here at the bottom of your XCall called Add Entity? The little plus button there. I see that? Click on your Add Entity button, and it's going to add an entity called Entity. We're going to click once on the word Entity with your mouse, click again, and it'll highlight it now to where we can name it. And we're going to call it Contact. In bold under number A, add Entity Plus, create a name, Contact. Make sure it's spelled just like that. C-O-N-T-A-C-T, hit enter. Now, the one thing I didn't tell you on the attributes have to be all lowercase, cannot be any uppercases, and no spaces. It cannot start with a number, okay? So no uppercase, no spaces, do not start with a number on the attributes. And we have 3 attributes we're going to be creating here, all string, email, full name, and phone. So pretty easy over here. Under attributes, you'll see a plus symbol where my mouse is pointed to on the overhead. You're going to click that three times. When you click it 3 times, it's going to create 3 attributes. Attribute, attribute 1, attribute 2. You're going to go into starting at the top. You're going to name them just like it is here on the overhead. The top one, you're going to name email, all lowercase. Full name is the second one. Phone is the third one. So I'll keep that up here for a second. If you get finished with that really quick, you can also go over to the type column and select string on all 3 because we're going to do that next. So email, full name, phone, type, string. And we're highlighting on the screen what you should be typing in right now. Email, full name, phone, and all type string. Okay, once you're done, it should end up looking like that, hopefully. So you should have on the left side under Entities, Contact, capital C-O-N-T-A-C-T. Attributes, you should have 3 of them. Email, full name, phone, all string. So far, so good? Go ahead and do a Command S on your keyboard to save what you've done thus far. Command S. So now that we've created the entity for our app and attributes, entity, contact, 3 attributes, email, phone, full name, phone, we're now going to go click on the main storyboard and go to the view controller and place in these objects here that's on the overhead. And I will blow this up to where you can see it a little better. I even put in there step 1, step 2, step 3. Step 1, by the way, is a title bar, which I'll do in a second with you. Step 2 is a bar button item. Step 3 is a 3 text fields. Step 4 is the 2 buttons here. Actually 3, I guess we'll put the call in there as well. So step 1 is a navigation bar. You'll see that in your objects. So I'm going to go to main.storyboard, click on that. Let it load up. And on the right side, we're going to be going to the Object Explorer here. The first one we're going to be looking for here as we scroll down, is the navigation bar. So I'll tell you where it's at. Scroll down. Right there. It's down a little bit ways. Called navigation bar. Looks like that. Has a lesser than symbol and the word title in it. And by the way, to get more real estate, we can click on this button here to collapse our outline, to make it a more full screen for us. Bring it up a little bit. Okay. All right, so I'm going to drag into mine, like you are, title bar. Right here's where you want to put it. And notice how mine snapped right in there. You'll see the blue line, vertical and horizontal. Right in the middle means it's centered. Right underneath the 941 and the battery is where you want it to sit. And you'll see, like mine, it'll snap up there at the top when it's in the right spot. As soon as you get to snap, I want you to go ahead and name, double click on title and name it contacts. Double click on the word title and just start typing in contacts. Secondly, we're going to add a bar button item. Bar button item is, by the way, a little down further from the navigation bar. The bar button item is going to go right here where my mouse is hovering on the overhead. Bar button item is going to go right here where my mouse is hovering. You'll click and drag it right in this location, and it'll snap right there. It'll snap right in there. Just like that. As soon as you put the item in there, I want you to go to the property inspector, the attribute inspector, remember, which is the fourth one over. And it should right now say item in the bar button item. You're going to put a lesser than symbol, capital B, A-C-K for back, and then hit enter. Again, this is the one you want to go to, the attribute inspector. My mouse is hovering. Once you've added that object, the bar button item, attribute inspector, go down to the bar button title and put it like I have on the overhead, lesser than symbol, back with a caps B. I got that? All right, continuing on. Next, we're going to add 3 text fields right on top of each other. Remember how I showed you a couple weeks back? When you add a UI text field, you can then duplicate it. Remember the keyboard command to duplicate? Command D, exactly. So we're going to do duplicate. We'll put 1 in there for full name, and then we'll duplicate it twice. So here, towards the top is where you're going to find your text box. There it is, text field. Click and drag it, and I'm going to make mine, does not have to be exact on yours. Looks like 150 width is what I'll make mine, 150. And I just, when you do what I'm doing on the overhead, and notice when you grow it or shrink it, after you grab that box on the right or left side, you'll see the W and H for width and height. I'm making mine roughly 150. It's a little bit more or less, no big deal. Then as soon as I get it up here, I'll kind of snap it to the top, right underneath the bar. And then I'm going to do a Command D twice and lay it right underneath each one of these. I want the space to be like that right there. And it will snap, by the way. You'll feel it when you go like this. You'll feel it snap in there. So I've got my 3 text fields. Next, I've got to add in 2 buttons right below those text fields for save and edit. And actually, I guess we'll throw in the call button, but I'll tell you what. Just for speed's sake, we're going to leave the call button out. How's that? We'll leave it out. Okay, so 2 buttons here, right underneath the text fields. And again, you can duplicate that one too if you want. So I'm going to put that one in there, duplicate it, Put that one there. This one here on the left is save by default. The one on the right is called edit. And by the way, you can edit the names of these two ways. You probably already figured out. You can double click on it and name it, or you can go to the property inspector and name it. So left one is save, the right one is edit. After you get through renaming them, readjust the buttons to where, like on the edit button, you want it to look like mine, to where it's right justified to the three buttons above. And the guides will help you, by the way. When that right blue guide shows up, it means it's flush with the buttons. Same thing with the save, we'll do that. So notice on my save, it's flush with the buttons on the left. It's also flush with the edit button on the right. It's centered with that. So it should look something like that so far. I think we're going to leave the label out too. The status label we don't need. We'll leave it out too. We don't need it. I think I didn't put that on here anyway. So we should have added so far navigation bar, 2 bar button items, 3 text fields, or bar button item, 3 text fields, 2 buttons, and an image. Image has not been added yet. And the image is for down here, by the way. I don't think we're going to be using it this time, but we'll throw it in there anyway. And the image is the image view is what I'm referring to. We'll just drag it in here for right now. Let's make the image the same width of the buttons. So whatever the default height is for that UI image, leave it at that. And then just drag in the width of that UI image to match the width of the button. And you'll know you're going to get there like this. When yours looks like mine, you got the left guide, the middle guide, and the right guide. It's all lined up, centered, and the same width of the top 3 buttons. And don't worry about height on that. That's fine. And we'll leave it right where it's at for now. Well, let's do this. Let's move it down to the very bottom, just to be safe for alignment's sake. I'm going to move that UI image all the way to the bottom. And notice it docks right here at the bottom. That's where you want it. Let's do that. Now let's do a Command S. Save it. All right, now we're going to have to create some outlets and actions. Some of these I did not have you create, so don't worry about it. We're not going to be creating the BTN call, the status. BTN call, anything that's call or status, we're not creating. All right, we won't put it in there. So full name, email, phone, save, edit, those top 4 for outlets we're going to create. For actions, we're going to create an action for BTN save, BTN edit, and BTN back. So I will leave this on the screen so you don't have to go back and forth on your Word document. I will do it with you and then come back to mine when it's finished. I'll lock that in where you can see that. That way you don't have to go back and forth on the Word document if you don't want to. And make sure when you create the outlets and actions, you're clicking on the Olympic symbol to do that. Remember the Olympic symbol on the upper right corner of Xcode. My mouse is hovered on it right now. So right there is the Olympic symbol. We'll click on that to be able to do the drag and drop. If you need to hide this right one, you can do that. And like I do a lot of times, I'll hide this right bar. And notice you can see a lot more code that way. You hide that. You don't have to, but I suggest that. It might be easier. Okay, I'm going to freeze this back. Keep up there the outlets and actions. And I would put some space right above your view did load for all this stuff. You're going to put everything above the view did load. The override function view did load is where you're going to put all the. So first one is full name. You want to? What was that now?
You're still on Word.
Yeah, I'm keeping that up for you guys. Yeah, so you won't have to go back and forth on the Word document. And once I get mine created in my Excel or in my Xcode, I will put it back. We need the buttons outlets as well because we're going to manipulate them by hiding them and changing the name. So that's why they need to be an outlet as well as an action. Okay, once yours is finished for the binding anyway, it should look like this. And to see a fuller view of this, again, you can go back to the detail view, this button here to see the view in more detail view, which is your standard editor. So you should have something like I have on the overhead. I've got my full name, email, phone, BTN save, BTN edit as outlets. I have my BTN back, BTN save, and BTN edit as actions. Created those. We're not doing the call or the status. Now we're going to create some delegates. We're going to control drag to the view control, full name, email, phone for the high keyboard. So I'll do that with you here on the overhead. So the way to do that easily is click on the little yellow circle in view controller. All right. And then you can come over here to the right side and look at the connection inspector and leave that up in front of you. Okay. And what you can do is this. See where my hand is on the top one, the top text field? I'm going to do a control click drag to the view. And then I'm going to come over here and select under outlet delegate. I'll keep that up here under outlet delegate. That's an easier way to do it than what I showed you a couple weeks ago. It's this way right here. You can just click and drag it in. Once I click delegate under outlet, you'll notice it adds that delegate here on the right side of my screen. It adds it. I'm going to do the same for the next two. Control click drag to the view. Delegate. Now if I click on that view controller now, again, I should now see 3 delegates like we did a few weeks back under the referencing outlets. 3 delegates for email, phone, and email. Email, phone, and full name. Got that? So again, the way I did that was I just did a control-click drag on this field to the view controller, release it, and select delegate, and do that on all 3 of them. And to verify you did it, click on the view controller icon, go to the show connection inspector, the right arrow, and you should see in there now under referencing outlets, delegate. If you highlight the word delegate, you'll see all 3 of those highlighted on your screen. You'll also see all the other ones that you did earlier, which you have all the outlets that were created. You have all the actions that were created at the bottom. And if you hover over the outlets and actions with your mouse, it'll highlight that actual object in the view. Make sense? Go ahead and do a Command S to save that. Okay, we're going to zoom out here now. We're going to zoom out from where we're at, which is at about, mine's at 77%, at the bottom of my Xcode. I'm going to zoom out by hitting the minus symbol here to the left of that percentage. And because I want to come over here, the next thing we're going to do in the Word document is we're going to, add placeholders. I didn't have you do that. You need to add the placeholders for full name, email, phone. So let's do that. Sorry. I'll go back up to 70%. I'll click on my top one, go to my inspector, attribute inspector, and we want to make sure in the placeholder, we're going to put full name for the top one. Middle one is email. So we'll just put email. That's fine. And the last one is phone. Just put phone. So we put some placeholders in there, so we want to have labels so the user knows what they're supposed to type in here. Full name, email, phone. Control S. Now let's zoom out. Okay, now we've got that view controller pretty much down. Now we get to do the fun stuff of adding in a table view controller. We're going to do the master detail stuff now. Okay, so what you got to do on this one is you have to add to your storyboard a UI table view controller. We've not done that yet. You're also going to create a class. We've not done that yet. We're going to do both of those. It's not real hard. So what you want to do is in the storyboard, looking kind of like mine, mine's at 25%. I've got that view centered kind of, doesn't have to be on yours. You want to scroll to the very top of your objects viewer. So far we've used view controller in this app. We're going to go down and find the table view controller, which is the 4th one down from the top. We're going to click and drag the table view controller to the right, or I should put it on the left. Let's put it on the left of the view controller that's in there right now. So we put the UI table view controller in there. And now, with the UI table view controller selected, and you'll know it's selected, by the way, you might have to zoom it in a little bit. I'll zoom mine into 50%. Make sure that the icon is selected, which is a view controller icon, the yellow one there on the left. Once you've done that, we're going to go to Editor, Edit, Editor, Embed In, and then Navigation Controller. So I'll keep that up on the screen. Editor, and then all the way down, embed in, about midway down, Navigation Controller. Editor, embed in, Navigation Controller. What it should do is, once you've done that correctly, which hopefully you did, is it should look like this. You should now have on the left a navigation controller, in the middle, the table view that you initially added, and now the view controller. All 3. You should have that. Okay? We have the beginnings now of our master detail. You'll also notice it has here in the middle a prototype cell, which we'll play with in a second. Also right here in the middle that you don't see anything under the timestamp, you can double click right here where my mouse is. right there. Might have to go a little higher. Oh, we'll do that later. Mine's not working. Oh, I have to add it. It won't let me do that until after we add the title. Now we have to add, select the navigator controller and add it to the top first. We have not done that. Select the navigation controller, attributes inspector, and make the title My Contacts. So all you have to do is click right here where my mouse is. I was right there. Click right here, come over here, and we're going to call it My Space Contacts. And it shows up. So right there, I typed in My Contacts. Notice how it shows up in the title now. And I'm in the Attributes Inspector. Let's do that. The other thing we need to make sure is that this navigation controller is the initial view, controller. So click on the navigation controller to the left, which is that one right there to the left, and we need to make sure and check that as the initial view controller. Now we're going to add in a bar button item, order it, select add, and control drag it to the view controller. So here's what we're going to do. You notice where My Contacts is. We're going to add a bar button item instead of to the left like we did on the view controller. We're going to add it here on the right, bar button item. So you know where that's at. You've already used that before. Let's find a bar button item and bring it in the top. And instead of the left side of this, we're going to put on the right. So I'll put it right here. And while that pops up, you'll notice how it says style bordered. That's what we need anyway. It needs to be bordered. The identifier, we need to be, instead of system item, we need to make sure it says add. You'll also notice now there's a whole bunch of different things you can do with a bar button item. And you've noticed all these in apps before, right? So you've got add, edit, done, cancel, save, undo, redo, compose, reply, action, organize, trash, bookmark, search, refresh, stop, camera, play, pause, rewind, fast forward, page curl. These are all defaults that you could select for a bar button item. We're going to select add, which should be a little plus symbol. When that's added, you'll need to reposition your screens now. It's a little tricky, but not too hard. Reposition your screens to where you see the plus here and your view controller here, right? And what we're going to do here in a second, we're going to control drag that plus button to the view controller to the right of it, release our mouse, and then we'll select present modally. That just means when I click on it, it's going to go to that page. So click on your button once, like I just did, then control click drag it to the view controller, release it, and this is the one you want to select here. I've hovered over on it. That third one down from action segue is the one you want to select. I'll leave that there. And this is being recorded too, by the way, as always. So present modally. And notice when I present modally now, it put a little thing in between here. If you click on it, there's a little segue now in between this and this. Okay, so we have our master, we'll have in a second, and our detail here. All right. So what we got to do now is on the table view cell, it needs to be a right detail. The identifier needs to be called cell. And we're going to control drag our table view cell as well to the view controller, present modally. So that's this item right here. Notice when I click right here, if you don't click in the right space, you're not going to get it. Make sure when you click on it, if you have to click away, like in this white space, that's fine. We want to click right about this area right here. And it should pop up and says Style Custom. We want it to be right detail. We want the identifier to be called cell, cap C, C-E-L-L. Okay, so right detail cell. Everything else we're going to keep the same. You'll notice though when you selected right detail cell, the word detail now shows up over here on the right side, right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to click and drag that detail to the view controller, that table view to the view controller. So control click drag, show detail. And now when you click on both of these in the middle, you'll see what the segue is. The top one on mine is a plus button. The bottom one is detail. Yours might be flipped maybe, but it might be like mine. Now here's a trick. Once we're on this one, we need to know when the user taps on a row, Xcode needs to know what's the identifier, what's a segue identifier. Well, the segue identifier we're going to use in a code, you can call it whatever. I call it update contacts because that's what it's doing. It's updating the contacts or creating contacts. But I just call it update contacts. So your segue identifier for the table view needs to be what I have here underlined in red, update contacts, just spelled like that. If you don't spell these right, when we copy our code here in a second, we'll get some errors, but you can correct that, but it might save you some typing. Okay. Now that we've done that, everything else we're going to leave like it is, by the way. It looks a little different than the screen I have, but that's fine. As long as you have identifier, update contacts, you're good to go. Now what we've got to do is we've already got the navigation item. We already have that. Yeah, we've already did that. We're good. Just do a Command S. Now we've got to create a class. On number 9, we're getting ready to go to the code, by the way. Number 9, we're almost there. We're going to create a brand new file in Xcode for the first time. We're going to create it called a Cocoa file. All right. Way back when Xcode first started, everything was called Cocoa. We used to have a club called Cocoa on campus, everything Apple related. But anyway, we're going to create a new file, iOS source, Cocoa Touch class next. The subclass we need to create is important. It needs to be a UI table view subclass. As you can imagine, there's a UI view controller subclass, a UI table view subclass, and a UI all the other stuffs that we've not used yet in the class subclass. So what we need to do is go over here to your contact folder on the left side and click on it. Okay. Then do a control click on that folder once you've selected it. Control click, new file. And here's where you want to really pay attention. Because you'll notice, before we go any further, there's a whole bunch of templates you can choose from. We're going to do iOS for sure, but notice you can do watchOS, tvOS, which would be the Apple TV, Mac OS would be a Mac OS operating system. If you scroll down at the top here, I'll just explain these real quick. The top section are the different type of files you can create a source of. Like we're going to do the Cocoa Touch, but you could also do a UI test case, a Swift file, Objective-C file, a header file, a C file, a C++ file, or a metal file. You could also do a user interface, a new storyboard, a new view, an empty object interface, a launch screen. You could also, this is what I talked about earlier, where it's better to add core data on the front end. Here's where you would add core data if you needed to add it on the back end. If you forgot, you just select data model and it would add core data. Apple Watch entity is like a storyboard for Apple Watch, which you can, by the way, add a storyboard for Apple Watch within a storyboard for an iPhone. That's generally how it's done. You have your iPhone app up here, your watch app down here in storyboard. And so, because the watch is going to have a very minimal amount of things that the phone's not going to have, right? Like a lot of your watch apps will have like an example. If it's a temperature app or something, it'll just show on the screen of the watch temperature only. Whereas the app might have wind speed, temperature, a little blurb on the forecast, whatever. You'll just have like a little bitty area on your watch to show something. So it's two separate you can add. Do I know? That's Apple Watch, the Apple Watch section here. And then resources you can add as well. I just want to explain some of these. A notification, which is popular on phones today, where you want to do a geosign, like a database connection, a property list, a rich text file, a scene kit for games, a setting, a sprite kit for games, string file, string dictionary file, and then others they've thrown in. And this kind of dates back further when Xcode first started. Assembly file, empty file, shell script, configuration file, markdown, PCH file. But we're going to create the top one, which is Cocoa Touch, which is a default that's selected anyway. Click Next. Here, before we type anything in, we need to select the subclass. And we need to have the UI Table View Controller subclass. And what we're going to name that one is Contact Table View Controller is what we're going to name it. Contact Table View Controller is what we're going to name it. Table View Controller is already in there, by the way, so we just have to put in the word contact in front of it. That's generally what I always do. When I create a subclass file, I just put in the front of the class what the name of that class is for. Like in this case, it's the master page that we'll bind it to in a second, and it's for the contact database. So we just call it contact. Leave everything else, the root, the suffix, or like it is, the post like it is, which in this case would be Table View Controller. That makes sense? It should already be Swift. We'll leave it at that. And so make sure it's Contact Table View Controller, spelled just like mine, caps C, caps T, and caps C. You should have just had to add contact in front. Make sure it's a UI Table View Controller. Do not check XIB, which is used way back when Xcode first came out with Objective-C. Swift language, we want that. Click Next. And then just click Create. It will add it now on the right side, left side of your screen. You'll now see the new class, and it should have highlighted it, and it should show it here in front of you, right down. Boom. But what we need to do now is, now that we've created that class, is we need to bind that class to the contact view controller in the middle. So here's what we're going to do. Click on main.storyboard. Click on the yellow button in My Contacts, the view controller button. And then this icon right here we've not been to before, but it's the Show Entity Inspector. We want to go there. And you'll notice how the custom class is empty right now. In fact, in gray, it should say like UI Table View Controller, right? But we're going to manually bind it. If we don't do this, by the way, we wouldn't be able to drag and drop, which we're not going to have to do for this one anyway, but we wouldn't be able to add objects to our to this page and to do any manipulation of outlets and actions. So we're going to click the drop down and select Contact View Controller. It should only be one in there. Hit Control S as soon as you do that. And now just to test this, I always do this, by the way, to make sure it's working. I'll come over here to anything on the screen here. Like say I'll click on that button we added. I'll click on that button, right? That bar button item. And then I'll click on the Assistant Editor. And it should automatically go to that new page we just created here. It should. If it doesn't, you named it wrong or you didn't bind it at all. The other thing I'll mention while we're in this page, if it never does, if it for whatever reason, you know you named it right, you know you created it with the right class, and it still doesn't go to the right page when you go up here to the Assistant Editor, Sometimes when you're adding a whole bunch of pages to an app, which I've done like 50, 60, 100 pages, sometimes when you're going too fast or too fast for Swift or Xcode, this thing will default to manual, right? And you just want to come up to the top and make sure it says automatic. That's all you got to do. So if it is manual, you'll come up here and go automatic. Then it'll go right to the page you want it to go to or need to go to. That makes sense. Okay. So without binding this class, we wouldn't be able to do certain things, like for instance, what we're getting ready to do, which is the code. Wouldn't also be able to create outlets and actions if we didn't bind the class, which we don't have to do for this page. All right. So let's go back to the document. Now, moment of truth, I guess. We're going to see how we type things, if we type things in right. We went ahead and added the objects to the view controller. We added the UI table view. We embedded it as a navigation controller, made that navigation controller a initial to the app. Now we're going to look at the code and copy and paste basically some code that we want from the existing app that we downloaded to the new app. So here's what we're going to do. If you click on Xcode window menu, you can go to the other one at the top, at the bottom, which should be My Contacts Plural, which is one we downloaded, I believe. And we'll go to the view controller first. Okay. Now, one thing we're going to have to do is be careful because you might have, hopefully you didn't rename things wrong, but there's some things we didn't do in here. Like we didn't create the BTN call button, I don't think. So what we're going to do is make sure, let's see, I think we'll be fine on the edits. Let me just look in here real quick. Yeah, okay. Let's just do this. I'm just going to see how we did on the naming. Let's just do a Command A inside of here. Command A to select everything. Command C. Command A will select it. Command C will copy it. Then go back to Window and go to our new one that we just created. Go to the view controller. Command A to select everything. Command V is in Valentine. Now you'll get some errors in the copy button, or it won't show up as being there because we didn't use them, but that's okay. We'll just leave it in there for now. No big deal. Shouldn't hurt anything. What I mean by that is you'll notice here on my code, see how the button is not fleshed out for the status and call lines. I mean, it's not bound. Doesn't error out or nothing on that, but we'll leave it in there for now. Same thing with the button call here. We'll leave it in there for now. Should be okay. But we're going to have issues, I know, when it comes down to the selector. We're going to keep that in there for right now. Don't worry about it. I'll help you with that in a second. All right, so I think we're okay right now. All right, go back to the My Contacts. Then we'll go to the new file we added, which was the contact table view controller. And we're going to do the very same thing we did. Control A, Control C, go back to the new one, go to the contact table view controller, Control A, Control V. Okay, good. Once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and go to the product menu, clean it, and product menu build. Product clean, product build. We're in a different version of Swift on ours. We might have to make some corrections, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. All right, my clean succeeded. Hopefully yours did. And the reason you do that, by the way, is, as you can imagine, especially because we replace code, there's going to be things maybe that, or definitely things that have been being compiled as we've been working on our Xcode project. When we replace it with new code, it doesn't know what to do sometimes with it immediately. It has IntelliSense, but it doesn't read it fast enough because we copy and paste stuff. So by cleaning it, basically we delete any files that have been saved up to that point temporarily or build-wise. And when we rebuild it, he rebuilds all the files, especially a file called APP file, this one right here, which is the executable app of this phone, all right, of this phone app, which APP is the app extension for Xcode. The actual external extension for an executable for iOS is IPA. IPA is the extension name. And we'll get that here in a few weeks. We'll have you guys, we'll do an export of one like that. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and go back to the storyboard, main.storyboard. Now we're going to have to do number 12, which is resize the objects only on the view controller only. We really don't need to worry about the contact table because there's really not much you can do there on that one to mess things up. We just added the plus button, I think, is all we did on that one. But on the view controller, we need to do the editor, resolve auto layout issues, reset to suggested constraints, which we do all the time on our apps up to this point. And I'm only going to do it on the view controller one only, this one right here. So I'm going to click on that, go to editor, resolve auto layout issues, reset to suggested constraints. All right. And ready to test. We'll go ahead and play it. If we do get errors, we will fix it. And we're going to get a selector error on that. We'll fix it. Okay, so I got a selector error on my, and this has to do with version changes of Swift, but we'll fix it. All right, let's go there. This little button here will help us. Okay, it says here, argument of selector refers to instance dismiss keyboard that is not exposed with Objective-C. Add OBGC to expose this instance method to Objective-C. So we're going to fix it. It's going to add a little OBGC to that. We'll rerun it. And you will get that periodically when you're updating from an older version of an app to a newer version like we're doing. Newer version of Xcode anyway. And you guys probably got that on yours too, I'm guessing, because it's the same version as mine. And that's fairly normal. The nice thing about newer versions of Xcode, they will tell you, for the most part, there's been times they haven't on some things, but generally it'll tell you the fix for it, and we'll just show you what it is, so you don't have to Google it and figure it out, which sometimes you might have to, but most times you don't have to. We're pretty good about doing that. It basically replaces how it used to be with something new, which means, okay, let's show the developers how to fix that. All right, so everything's good so far, it looks like. I got my search bar up there. I'm going to add in a test here for a new contact. If this doesn't work, we'll figure it out why here. Thinking. Stop it, rerun it. Okay. I knew we were going to have a problem with that call button. Okay, we're going to have to get rid of the call button code. That's all right. So BTN call. We don't need to get rid of it. Well, let's just do it to make it cleaner, I guess. Anywhere you see BTN call or status lines of stuff, get rid of that. We don't need it. So I'll just manually have you eye it like I am from top to bottom on the view controller. I'm getting rid of my outlets first. Then I'm going to go down here and get rid of the function BTN call. Don't need that. We could probably leave that in there, but I'll get rid of it anyway. And the culprit's going to be down here where it's, the status one where we didn't use that. Get rid of that. And on the status one, by the way, I got rid of the entire if logic if an error comes up. For now, anyway. Get rid of that. Oh, here on the save, no, view did load. Line 105, it calls that BTN call, doesn't exist. And line 112 doesn't exist. And let's see. Don't worry about the little warning on variable error on line 62 here. If you got that on the save button, we'll leave it. We should be okay on that. Good, good. All right. Try it again. I'm going to stop and recompile it. Just get rid of what I know I had to do. I know we were going to have to do some cleanup because I didn't have you guys put the BTN call and status, but that's all right. Okay, so now let's put in my name, email. Oh, remember, if the keyboard doesn't pop up, like mine's not popping up, Control K, Command K actually should bring it back up. I'm gonna click away to make sure that keyboard thing's working. The high keyboard's working good. And the segue's not working. All right, let's figure that out. Probably on the save button logic. Written to, never used. Save, yeah. Try to call that right. Full name, email, phone, contact. Yeah. I'm going to put a breakpoint in here to see what's happening. Oh, added the, okay, it must be on the back table then. All right, on the load, going back in. Gibberish in here now. Let's see why it's not saving it or why it's not going to that page. Okay, what I'm doing now is I'm doing a break by putting a cursor here. I'm breaking on line 42. And you can debug through it, continue step over it with the F6 key. We'll step through it. So I'm going to tap the F6 key here, and you'll see on the overhead, it'll walk through it. Go, yeah. Okay. There's some logic here for that. Let's start with my code. I don't have the dismiss statement in there. I got rid of all that. Oh well. My bad. The save button, I got rid of the if statement that if it did error out, it was supposed to put it on the status reason. Else is supposed to dismiss it and go back. I didn't put that. I got rid of that. So I'm gonna bring that back in. All right, but I'm gonna comment out that status line because we're not using that label. There we go. Now let's try it. I knew I deleted more than I supposed to. Oh well. Oh, I got rid of that one too, but I got rid of the error. Got rid of the error variable. Yes, I did. Right up here. Didn't think I got rid of that. Yes, I did. Oh, I deleted way too much. Wrong area. Helps to put it in the right area. Here we go. Save, save, save. All right. Okay. Now we're on. Now we should be better. There we go. That's where it wants to go. Now let's see if it works. You guys probably didn't delete it. I didn't. Emma. There we go. Okay. Now it's third time the charm. Jim Jerry. Jerry at Gmail. Hey, now it works. Deleted too many. That's what happens when you leave stuff out of a tutorial. All right, cool. All right, so that's working out. Now let's go over this real quick. If we could. Yeah, we're good on time. I want to go over quickly the code here, how it works. So I will go over, because your tutorial is going to be based on leaving the call button in there and the status button. So I'll go over that. I'll go over that one. Your handout anyway goes over that. So let's start out with the view controller page. Binded the, make sure I'm in the right one. Yeah, contacts. Binded the, in the edit button, all it does is when this app has an existing record and you go to it, it hides the save button, keeps the edit button viewable in this load command. So I go down to the load command. So if the contact database is not equal to null, it's going to, whatever record they were on currently, it's going to pull in the keys for all those records. So full name, email, phone. It's going to change the title of the save button to update. It's going to hide the call button, or the call button is not going to be hidden. The edit button is not going to be hidden. The full name is enabled. It's false, meaning they can't edit the full name. Email enabled is enabled, false. Phone is enabled, false. BTN save, true. And so in this case here, if contact database is not equal to nil, meaning there's information in there, it's going to look like this. All right. Then, going on down, it's also going to put it inside of the full name icon or full name field here to make changes. But notice I can't do anything in here right now. I can't do anything. The reason I can't is when you hit the edit button, which I'll go up there. And notice how you can scroll the different functions. I'll go to the edit button. In the edit button, all it does is makes the full name enabled, email enabled, phone enabled. It takes that save button, which should already be hidden, to false. Edit button, true, hidden, and puts full name as the first responder. So if I click edit button's gone now. Update button's here. Now I can make my change and click update. Let's look at the update function. The update function, find it here, going to be the edit button, I believe. No, in the save button. BTN save button is where it's going to be at. In the BTN save button, if the contact database is not equal to nil, meaning it's basically going to be an existing record, it's going to take the contents of the full name, email, and phone and put it in the text boxes. Else, it's going to have to create a manage object entity here on 67, tie it to that contact database, and notice the word contact because that's what we named it. The contents of full name, email, and phone is going to go into the contact database, full name, email, and phone attributes over here. Then it does an error check. If it saved it, fine, you're good. Okay. If it errors out, it errors out. Same here. If it errors out, we didn't use the status here on ours, but if, say, for instance, I don't know, we do this. I'll just do this for kicks here. I'll name this something different. Instead of contact, I'll put well, let's do it up here. Contacts there. Yeah, I'll just make a manual change on that just to see, just to throw an error. I could also do it on the name on one of these here. I'll do it just on that for now so you can see it. And for this to fire here, by the way, I've got to create a new record. Can't use an existing one. It's got to be, well, I'll take it back. It's got to be an existing one for that to work, not a new one. Yep. Start it. Okay. Edit. I'll get rid of the S and conkles, hit update. Oh. Wrong logic. Plus. There we go. Now we got an error. Yay. Okay, cool. Oh, I did have an else logic. Sorry. Cool. So they did catch it. If it would have kept going, it would have caught it in the error label down here at the bottom, but it caught it right here. Cool. All right, so that's the update logic. Also is in here, what we've done in the past already, is the hiding keyboard. There's your touches begin. Dismiss keyboard. Throwing the keyboard out anytime you go away from the text box. Anytime you go away from hit the enter key, it's going to go to the next field. And let's see what else here. Oh, the back button. I didn't go over that one. On the back button, BTN back. All it does is do the self.dismiss, what dismisses to whatever entity it came from, in this case is the master file. This contact database, contact table view controller. Okay, in the contact table view controller, to get the nice fancy search bar at the top of each one of the, even before one's created, you'll notice at the top here, You have to add in your core data first. Core data and foundation has to be added. You'll have to add a delegate when you create one in the next week. Some delegates have to be added, which is the UI search results, updating UI search bar delegate, and UI search controller delegate has to be added. An NS manage object I called filter table data, a result search controller called UI search controller, and another one for the database. So here's the reason. The contact array, that's a NS manage for all of the database initially. So when it runs initially, I'll add in just one to show you what I mean. Okay, we'll use this one. Didn't like what I called that, I don't think. With a real name. Smith. There we go. Okay, so whenever this is using the default here, when it first loads, is using the contact array. When I do a search, this NS managed is the filtered data table array. That is all occurring, by the way, here in this function called update search results. Okay, update search results first does a search here at the top by removing all from the filter table data. Then it calls a search command to that SQL database where full name contains whatever you type in, regardless what letter. Next line puts it in an array. Next line populates the filter data table. Next line loads the data table to where you only see what you've typed up here at the top. If I hit back and hit cancel, everything comes back. Okay. When the thing loads here, by the way, using the view will appear, what that means is it's going to load every time it comes back to the master view, to the contact table view. So I put a comma up here. It adds, the view did appear needs to be added on any view where it has to fire upon every time it comes, which it does in this case. It calls the load database, which all it does is load the database. It loads everything in the contact database, and it loads it in the contact array by default, reloads the data. If there's an error, it'll print it out during development. The user won't see it, but you can see it when you're running it. You won't get an error unless you name something wrong in a contact creation. The view did load. It's going to add in initially the search bar and the search controller. And it's going to put it at the very top of the bar or of the actual page. And it's using that actually by this control here. So this is actually declaring a controller, UI search controller. This line's adding it as a object. This line's adding it, the search bar as an object. These next three lines size it at the top of the grid and puts it in the table header view, which is always going to be at the top of the table, right in this section here. Above the table is this table header view. So that loads when it loads every time the app loads, every time it comes back to that page. So when you go away and come back, it's loading every time in this section here. Going on down, when you click on each row, you've already done this part in the master detail a few times, but something new here. When you tap on a row, it can either be filtered data or contact array. Filtered data would be if you filtered something and that research bar is active. That's going to come here and return a count of 1 in this case. If that's filter bar is not active, meaning I hit cancel here, it's going to go to the full count of that contact database. Now, when I click on any one of these rows, It also needs to determine, is it being clicked on during a search, which would actually be here in the if logic. If it's true, if this is true, it's going to only filter the filter data table from this view here. If it's not true, it means it's going to go to the else path. Okay. You'll also notice in here at the table view, I added in here the detail view label as 2 greater than symbols. It could be whatever. It's generally used like that though, but it could be something like, just to show you how you can manipulate it. It could be something like this. Putting a dash greater than symbol. And so this is at the very end of that right detail. You can manipulate whatever you want it to be in the detailed text label .text. There it is. So there's the new one I just added right there. And that's what that's manipulated right here. Now, when I click on a row, going on down to the segue, here's the reason why we had to name it what we did. You go down to the very bottom. If segue identifiers update contacts, that's the entire statement. Meaning, if this wasn't named correctly on the segue, which remember you named that when you added in the detail right here, update contacts. If it's not named that correctly, but you have it in code that way, I'll show you what happens. And that's why it's important to, I always name it something that I know makes sense, number one. Number two, immediately when I name it a segue, if nothing else, I'll put it as a comment in that contact table viewer. That way I know what I named it when I get to that section. If that makes sense. So we'll see here what happens now that I've named it something differently. I try to go there. And this is going to fall... irregardless, I misnamed it on purpose. So this should not fire. Anything in the if statement should not fire now when I click on a row. Well, it does fire, but notice there's no data. It goes where it's supposed to go because remember we did the segue over to that, but notice no data shows up. So if I correct that, go back. Back in there. Good. Let's fire it up again. So yeah, the segue goes over there like it's supposed to, but no data shows up because the if logic doesn't fire, doesn't bring any data over. There we go. Okay, now let's talk about this. Almost done here. In the if logic for the segue, what it's grabbing is if it's a search segue, meaning that search result is active, then it's going to grab the index of that row on this line. Then it's going to grab the NS object for that line. And notice it's pulling it from the array. It's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, whatever row you selected. Going to populate it into the contact DB, which is on the view controller side. Remember, if we go to the very top here, the contact DB is defined right towards the top of the code. That might be under my objects here. Let's see here. Contact DB, where's it at? Here it is. So on the load, well, let's go to the load button first. The load first. The load, if contact DB is null, so this is where it's loading it to inside of the segue. So it's putting in that unique row, whatever they selected, into the contact database. And it's going to be on that NS manage object for the view controller. If it's not a search, it's going to do the same exact thing, except it's using the contact array as that manage object, and going to push it over in the contact DB like for the search. So contact DB is the database for this. Actually, it's right here on line 110. Var contact DB colon NS manage object is the variable for the contact database core data. So the beauty of this is once you wrap your head around and you do this tutorial that I put together, but do this for me, even though we didn't do it in class, add the buttons I didn't have you add, which was the VTN call and the status label. Do that because you'll need it. Otherwise, you'll get the error I got. Everything else, hopefully you got some stuff out of it as far as just the creation of it part would hopefully be good. The object creation of the data source and core data. Something new we created tonight too, remember, was a new class. You hadn't done that before. Also taking a single view and making it a master detail app on the fly. And anytime I make a master detail, by the way, I always do it this way. I always start out with a single view first and add in with a UI table view my master. That way I have full control over that table view, how I want it to look, if that makes sense. And by the way, the master detail, that table code and how we did everything over here, 99% of apps that use a master detail are in this type of format. Have a plus symbol to add something, and then the functionality is pretty much as it is here that I've given you in the tutorial. And so once you understand how to create a master detail, functionality of it, you have a template for every other master detail app you'll ever create that has a core data database, which a lot of master detail apps, by the way, have a core database as the back end. If that makes sense. So homework is doing what we did in class, except adding the call button and the status label that we didn't do. Submission for the in-class, just to make sure I get this. Let me make sure what I got on that. Because I'm just going to have you guys submit that you did it. It says, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you can zip it together. I think I have you doing it as a website URL, but let's do it this way. Just for fun, let's do this. In your GitHub URL that you sourced and you had to fork, let's just get the URL of that. How's that? So it should be whatever your name is, 03 iOS Bootcamp My Contacts. Just copy that URL. That's fine. I'm not going to have you upload the one you did in class. You don't need to do that. So I'll have something to grade. Submit that URL here in the in-class. That makes sense? The one that you forked. So the one that you forked, highlight that URL, post it here. While you're doing that, I'm going to go over your take-home. Your take-home, you're going to do what we did in class exactly, except you're going to be thinking of a type of app you want to create. Not say you can't do a contact database, but maybe think of something more creative possibly for you. Like again, if you're doing fantasy football, if you're doing, you like to do recipes or whatever, it doesn't matter. Something useful that you could use, maybe do something like that. Or if your final app can use core data and you've not yet started your final app yet, this might be a good idea to start it, check core data, and at least on paper or on a Word document or something, think of the context of what you need field-wise for your application. And it doesn't have to be fully fleshed out. All I want is when you submit this week, even if it's your final app, you don't have to have a working core data for your final app option. All I want to see is you've created the project, core data has been checked, and if you've not yet, and I don't expect you to have your table all fleshed out yet, As long as you've created the project, core data has been checked, and you've named it, I'm good. And if you have in that root file a text file of a little data dictionary of kind of what you're thinking, that's great. Not required. Does that make sense? And then you'll create that repo in GitHub, upload it like we've been doing in GitHub. Couple things on your GitHub repo before we're done. Oh, before we do that, let me go finish up this. For the assignment, you're going to create your own choice of application. The app will have a UI table view like ours did. Make sure on the UI table view, when you do the initial checkbox, you check this one, the navigation controller, not this one. What I mean by that is this is the initial controller. This isn't. This is. That's the root of your app now. Remember, by default, this was the initial, which was the view controller. But when you added the navigation, this was now the view controller. And you can see it over here is initial view controller. It's in the document, but it's best to visually show it to you. Hide keyboards in there as well. Make sure the updating records, adding records, deleting records works, like the in class. Make sure your hide keyboard works. If that doesn't work, more than likely you didn't do what? If the hide keyboard does not work, and I'll highlight on the overhead, a little help for you. That doesn't work. What did you forget to do maybe? Anybody? What did you forget to do? Right here. Anybody? Starts with a D. Yeah, delegates. You forgot to add your delegates, which I've done umpteen times, forgot to do it. So if your hide keyboard doesn't work, you did not add your delegates to drag them up to the view controller. You didn't do that. That's an easy one to forget. But if you go step by step in the Word document, you should be fine. Challenges, create an app icon, 20 points extra for that. There's a link on how to do it. I'll go there right now. You might not have heard of Pixlr, but I use that in my photography class when I teach it, and I'm a graphic designer for years. We use it to create basically like an online Photoshop. And you'll create a 1536 by 36 image, put whatever you want to on it. You don't have to be fancy about it. You can just put in there your, like say if it's called recipes, you want to put a big R in there. I don't care. Just something. That way you create something, right? I don't expect a whole bunch of artistry, Vinci stuff. So, but make, 50 by 30, 1536, save it to JPEG. You'll go to this website. This is an awesome website, by the way. I'll kind of show it to you. Some of you might have been there maybe when you looked ahead. But if you go to this website, what's cool about it is it has a toaster. You'll see in a second that shows up. All right. And what you do is you scroll down here. It'll tell you if you forgot the size on this website. It'll say make sure your images are 1530 by 730. You choose your file. Once you choose your file, it puts it in a toaster. You actually see it going down into the toaster. Once it's done, you put your email in there, and it sends you a zip file of all the icons you need that iOS requires in the App Store and all the icons needed in the Android store for your app. It's kind of cool. Not only creates a splash screen, but it also creates all the icons and everything for your app, all from that one file. When it's completed, you'll enter your icon, like I said. When you get done, it'll download it to your computer. It'll create a folder in that zip file called appicon.app You'll drag that folder into Xcode. And, well, first of all, you go to Xcode, drag it in. I'll show you here visually what I mean by that. So on the root of your project here, down at the bottom, there is a app icons area. You'll click on that. See how it has app icon 1, app icon 2. That's the one I drug in there, the app icon 1. And all these icons it created for me in that Make App Icon website, okay? What's cool is once you drag that folder into this environment, it'll create it just like I did on this one. It'll create app icon -1. You'll go back to the My Contacts, and then you'll scroll down and you'll have the option now to select the new app icon 1. And when you do that, you then have all of those images now available. So if I run this, now I'm using app icon 1. You'll see an icon now on the phone. Here in just a second, which I didn't have by default. Turned it off on default, so you'll see it. You'll see it build it here in a second. Like magic. Ooh, there it is. There's a splash screen. So that's the challenge. And it does all that for you. And what's cool about it, like on the simulator, now you have a nice little icon. And again, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can just be, like I said, a letter if you want to. It doesn't matter. You put a picture in there, whatever. I'll talk more later on design stuff. Don't worry about that this week. Just worry about creating it, getting it to work. And probably the simplistic way to do it is a letter or 2 character or something like that. You don't want a lot in there. You want it like right in the center. It'll be a square anyway you're creating. That makes sense? So you'll drag that in there, recompile it, and then you'll have your app icons. 20 points extra, something fun to do. And so you should have time to do that. Once you go through the Word document in detail, and definitely don't leave out the stuff we did in class, which was BTN column status. Put that in there. Wasn't a lot more to add. I don't know why I left it out, but anyway, whatever. My bad. So whenever you are finished, you'll test it like you did in class. So yours will be a little different than this one. Once you determine what you're going to have for fields, if it's a recipe, it might be okay. Instead of contacts, it's recipes. Name a recipe. And then you might have, a text box here that you put all the ingredients in, whatever. You can put all the ingredients in one text box. What I mean by that is the text view, that we used last week, I believe, in the contact database, week before. Remember that text view object? If you wanted a multi-line, you could use a text view object, which, remember, that one is near the bottom, if I'm not mistaken, of the classes. And remember that one, it adds in that dummy text by default. You could use that if you wanted like a multi-line type of object, if that makes sense. But you don't have to do it that way. That's just one thought. It could be anything. I know my son's into fantasy football. You could create a fantasy football app or whatever. Make sense? Nothing real. Again, just leave it all to text. Leave it all to text-based or string type objects, if that makes sense. That'll be easier for you. We will learn at the end of the semester. I've got some extra tutorials that those of you want from my boot camp class of how to take this to the next level and add in things like be able to take a picture and save it in this type of environment, take a video and save it, which some of you might be interested in doing. It's not going to be a requirement for you guys to do it. It's to turn in, but it might be some extra you might want to do. And so questions on your take home? Nada? Okay. Well, we are done. If you have any questions, come up and see me. Again, ramping up for the end of the semester while you're wrapping up your stuff here. And next week, week 9, let's talk about that real quick while you're closing down and everything. For our in-class next week, you'll be creating, bring your Apple devices if you have them. How many has an Apple device, either an iPhone or iPad? iPhone or iPad, either one. I just want to kind of see, raise your hand, so I'll know how many iPads to bring. All right, so I'll bring about half a dozen iPad minis. So what we'll do next week is we will make sure I have your UDID when you come to class. I'll make sure everybody's a part of the Apple developer account. If you've not accepted the invite, see me right before you leave if you've not gotten an invite from Apple to become a developer, so I can make sure and find out what's going on there why you've not gotten it. And then we are not going to do the GitHub for Mac next week. We are going to do the figuring out how to get your UDID from your device. I'll show you how to do that. We'll also show you how to connect your iPad or iPhone to the Mac and install an app natively on your device for the first time. And it's called side loading is what it's called. And I'll show you how easy that is to do. And we'll do that together for the in-class. For your take-home, you're going to be updating or creating your very first GitHub web page for your app. And so your GitHub web page, here's an example of one of an app actually on the App Store now that was done years ago called Cool Drop Photo. Cool Drop Photo basically was created for folks in real estate who have to take pictures of all the houses, right? And they kind of have to keep track of all those images. Well, the way this works is when the images are created, it saves it in a Dropbox folder versus a phone or iPad folder. And then it also creates a link in a PDF file to a map of GPS coordinates where the image was taken. And so folks back at the headquarters could pull up that Dropbox folder and view as the clients are taking pictures, as the real estate folks are taking pictures. If they have the app, they can actually view it within the app as well of all the images and click on an image, click on a PDF. They click on a PDF, it actually shows them the map, the pictures, all on one page. So anyway, that was an idea that a student had. He was a real estate developer, and we worked on that. And that was the original page for the app for testers to test the app and to go out and to get the Beauty ID. And you'll learn how to do all that next week. You'll be creating your final app next week, and we'll go over that example of how to do it. It's pretty simple to do. It's not real hard. You don't have to know any HTML or anything to do it. So that's week 9. Week 10, and the reason I'm going over this is we're coming pretty close to working on your final. Week 10 in class is going to be doing preferences. Every app has preferences like username, password, preferences it'll save, color preferences, location, city, state, social, whatever. App preferences are local to the device. It's secure to that device. Apple doesn't even know what that information is. It's just on that device, okay? Can't be shared. It's only, so that's what preferences are for, and we'll talk about what that's about and do a lab on that. You'll do a preferences take-home called My Settings, where you'll learn how to all the different types of settings you can have for preferences, from birth date to location to region to intervals to metrics to whatever. You get a whole bunch of different preferences you can have on an app. I try to throw the whole kitchen sink at that one to kind of see how it works. Then week 11. Week 11. We are doing My Movies. You get to pick your 3 favorite movies of all time. Mine is What About Bob? Is my #1 favorite movie. We'll get to, and Clifford. Anybody remember Clifford movie? You know who's in that one? Martin Short. He plays a 12-year-old boy. Yes, the crazy movies is the ones I like. Anyway, you'll get to pick your 3 favorite movies, show you how you can link. It'll be basically click on an image and be able to load a video, a YouTube video from your app and load it in a segue kind of master detail view type of thing. We'll do that for the in-class. For take-home, you'll be adding a video feature to your final app if needed. And I give an example of, say, I think every app should have some type of like, here's how to do something if you want to know. A lot of people don't look at it, but if you wanted to look at it, that's what I suggest for all your apps anyway. It's like a little quick how-to. And it could be usually it's a screencast like we do in class where you're literally have a simulator up and you're showing people how to use the app and using a free tool like Screencast-O-Matic or something to do it. So anyway, we'll do that on week 10. Week 11, or week 12, I'm sorry. Week 10, all right, movies. I think it was week 11 we're at. Yeah. Week 11, adding videos. And then week 12, you start working full-time on your app. Class attendance is optional. So if you have a Mac at home or some way to work on your Mac, whether online or on your Mac, on your laptop, if you've ported Xcode to it, you can work on it outside of class. I will be here each session, like always. But inside of here is where you'll start working full-time on your app. That's why I kind of suggest this week. If you've not yet started creating the app name, at least, you can do that. Get that out of the way. Kind of foundation with, core data or something. Week 12, week 13, same, work on your app. There's tons of resources we'll go over each week that's in this resource folder. On the discussion for that week, it's basically for 12 and 13 and 14. It's what did you get finished? What did you accomplish that week? Also, I'll mention now, because when we get to week 12, you don't have to wait till then. If you know you're going to need help in something in your app, ask me sooner than later. That way I can be giving you examples you need for that functionality to work. Does that make sense? You don't want to wait till week 13, 14 to ask me. Kind of wait. Like if you know now, by looking at what we're going to cover and what you want to do in your app, you go, well, we're not going to cover this, or I need more help. Let me know now. That way I can help you. Does that make sense? That way you can start throwing at you examples of stuff you can start looking at. Does that make sense? So you can start doing that now, because weeks 12 through 14 is optional. Week 15 is mandatory, because we need to do a final checklist on your app. Make sure you got everything and you're almost there. And week 16, you'll present. Everybody will present one to the other, your app and your functionality. I don't expect 100% of your app to work in week 16, but main functionality should be there and how things are kind of going to work when it's done. Does that make sense? It's kind of a prototype kind of thing, if that makes sense. It's kind of a prototype. So like your screens are there and maybe limited functionality on how the app works. That's all I'm looking for. That makes sense? I'm not looking for an app ready to publish on the App Store. It's not enough time. But it is enough time to get a good start on a foundation. That way when you leave the class, you can keep working on it and hopefully publish it to the App Store. All right. Well, that's it. See you next week. If you have any questions, come up and see me. Also, if you've not got an invite from Apple, come up and see me so I can make sure and jot your name down and at least find out what your Apple ID is so I can send you an invite. If it did not come to you, I can contact Apple to get that to you. Yeah.
Would there be any legal problems with my app ID of student services? It's a wrapper for student services, which makes it so much easier. Maybe use their functionality to better functions.
As long as you're not, there are some FERPA limitations. I'll have to find out about that. Tell me what the content you need to access, and I will find out.
My student services, Rock Valley student services.
The student services, okay.
Basically, no content I'd be making.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
Oh yeah. So you're talking about making like a portal for it?
Yes.
Like a portal. If you're just doing a portal, like a web wrapper, bringing it in and doing some stuff, that should be fine. Okay. No, you should be fine then. Yep, you should be good.
What do you think about that?
No, I like it. Yeah.
Great for
Yes. I like it. Yeah, let's do it. Sounds good to me.
Pass it to you first before. So we do our final checks. So we're putting them in GitHub, right?
Yeah, it'll be private though. I'll talk about that probably the next couple of weeks. Make sure it's a private repo.
What license am I going to put on it to keep this file? I have to say it. So it's in when they get the code. What license do I attach to it? To say private code.
Well, it'll be private. It'll be they won't even see it. If it's private repo, they won't even see it.
Do
only you see it.
Projects like that still use the license? Like I always pretty much use GNU version 3 or the MIT one.
MIT will work. Yeah, MIT. The way software licenses work as far as legal.
Private ones?
Yeah. You don't really have to have them anymore. But yeah, you can use that for sure if you want to. If you want it to be open source, but if you're going to be closed source, which I recommend initially while you're developing it, and then you can convert it to open source later. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Exactly. Ouch. Yeah, I remember you said that. You did, yeah.
I think that's basically the same option.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah.
So
Just do your best to keep up. You've been communicating with me, all right? So just keep working at it, and you should be okay.
that's if I can't do Mac as of the moment. But
Okay.
how much is the Mac Mini?
Mac Mini price point, you can get them around $450. But then also you can, if you have, what kind of laptop do you have?
Got one from work. Big dummy wallet. I got a Toshiba. Put custom 8 gigs in there.
Do you have an Intel chip on it?
Intel i5 3200.
Mm-hmm.
It's at 3. I wish 2.3. I can't overclock it.
That should work. I mean, you should be able to do the VMware like I set up for Curtis.
So I'm gonna put an SSD and that would just top it off, right? Should be fine.
Yeah, I think you need about 70 gigs drive space.
That's it?
Yeah.
Cool.
Good.
Thank you.
If you want to do that, let me know. We'll set up like it's going to take about an hour and 2 hours. We'll do like on a Saturday, or you can follow the step. I have the steps in the module as well on the course site. Have you seen
Yeah,
that?
I'm sure I can follow those. If I have any problems.
Okay, let me know.
I'll-
Cool. Yes, sir.
2 questions.
Yep.
One, the edits that you made to the app on the screen,